All right, welcome back to Afternoon Drive here on Joppa Radio. My name is Drew Moholland. Hope you're all having a good Tuesday. Hope it's been a good start to the week. Jim Vaiknoras is in the house. Jim, how are you? Newburyport Daily News.
Very good. How are you today?
Good. So, I let the everything out of the bag here before you even came in, but you were retiring after how many years?
32 years at the Daily News.
32 years at the Daily News. How? Go ahead, Tyler. You can just touch the thing. It's fine. Tyler Neufeld helping us out, producing in here. But the unbelievable run at one place too. Huh? Crazy.
Yeah.
That's you don't see too much of that nowadays in that industry, and you must be one of the few over there that have put in that kind of run, huh?
Well, yeah, I've been there 32. I think Brian Eaton, the other photographer, has been there almost 30.
All right.
So the two of us,
Absolutely.
it's an easy place to work.
That's good.
And Newburyport's, an easy place to take pictures of.
It is. There's some beautiful spots. So now, do you live in Newburyport? Or?
I do not. I live in Wakefield.
Oh, okay.
I lived in Newburyport very briefly in 1988, 1989 before I got married.
All right. Well, I got to say, I think you look too young to retire here. What's the...
Well, I'm not really retaring. I'm just kind of moving on.
Moving on. Oh, okay.
I'm retiring from the Daily News.
Gotcha.
So that's...
All right. Well, that's
and thank you for telling me I look too young to retire.
Well, that's good. Well, what a great run, though. How rewarding has it been to work at the Daily News? It seems like a fun industry to work for a newspaper through the golden ages, too, really.
Yeah, it is. I mean, it really has been kind of a nice run. I mean, I saw the industry go from black and white film and, making prints in the darkroom,
Yep.
All the way up to multimedia. And we're shooting video with our cameras,
Yeah.
and fully digital. I can work from anywhere.
Yeah.
It really is been quite a journey when you look back on the.
You could write a book on it from going into the
yeah.
dark and stuff. These guys don't even know what you're talking about here. Some of the younger producers, when you talk about actually developing those pictures.
Yeah, I work with photographers who never.
Wow.
Some of the younger photographers have never developed film. They're like, wow, what was that like? It's like you couldn't look at what you had? No, you couldn't.
Wow.
Everything had to be spot on. And but, yeah.
Wow, that's crazy. What's the, that's obviously going to be the biggest change, right, is the digital revolution here and all that. How about I know it's no secret that newspapers it's a changing world. It's not exactly an easy time for newspapers. Has it been kind of tough to watch some of those changeovers and people not buying those physical papers as much as they used to?
The main thing is 10, 12 years ago, we had 9 full-time reporters at the Daily News, and now we have 4. So it's as we contract more circulation-wise, we don't replace people.
Right.
So that's kind of the people will ask, how come you don't cover this or this or this anymore? It's like because we don't have anyone to cover them.
You're going to make your choices.
It's just and the paper's physically a lot smaller, but that's just a product of sort of the industry.
Yeah.
Advertisers have other places they can go.
Yeah.
And that's
And then, of course, you have to build up your online stream too, which I know you guys have done over there. That's which is good. That's a good resource, but it is certainly different. What's the so let's talk a little bit about the art of the photo, because I'm always curious about this. When some the actual photographers, like I'm into photography. I like cool pictures. When I take a great photo, I love it. I'm very into it, and I'm trying to figure out why all my pictures don't look as good as like when you pros. You pros find ways of capturing the moments. What's the what's your favorite moment you've captured over the years? Any?
There's been a lot. I think about like the big stories we did. There's a great photograph that I took 5 years ago of a house falling into the ocean of Plum Island.
Wow, yeah.
And that's sort of been one of the big stories we've had is erosion on Plum Island.
Yeah.
And to stand there on a deck. And it's funny when you'll see the picture. You stand on the deck, and the waves are crashing below you, and you're looking out at this person's house that has collapsed, and all their stuff is just getting washed into the ocean. It really is. It's heartbreaking, and it has a lot of, and especially you follow up with it, and you get to talk to these people and find out, just their heartbreak, and you sort of right there looking at it.
Yeah.
But that's something that always meant a lot to me.
That must be pretty. That must be. It's got to be emotional for the photographer too, because
it is.
Taking that photo, there's a lot that goes into these houses. And
a lot of people think of journalists as being sort of jaded, but they're the same as anyone else.
Right.
When they come across a scene of something bad that happened or something great that happened, you get caught up into it.
Yeah.
I even get caught up a lot of times covering high school sports.
Yeah.
Like a championship run or a team that loses in a championship.
Yeah.
you kind of feel it because, they're not your kids, but
Right.
they're somebody's kids.
Yeah.
So, that always kind of gets me a little bit. And we've had some great, I think we've had some great high school sports teams around here over the past years. I think Newburyport has had 7 or 8 championships since I've been there.
Yeah, you get that raw emotion of a high school kid. Life does go on even after tough losses.
Yeah.
But that's all that's in their life at the moment. It seems like the end of the world sometimes.
Yeah, and even the loss, you want to have that, you want to have those pictures. At the moment they may not like them.
Yeah.
To see themselves emotionally breaking down after a game, but I think when they get older, they appreciate that a little bit. But that's one of the things that I always try to bring into photography is there's that element of empathy.
Yeah.
I don't think you can take good photographs unless you have some sort of empathy for the subject matter. I don't think you can create art without empathy.
Oh, it's an interesting line. Yeah, I can imagine where that connection comes in. Though.
Yeah. If you don't feel what they're feeling, you can't project that in your photograph. You're almost like you're experiencing through the camera.
Gotcha.
So that's something that.
So there's such thing as like a soulless photo.
Oh yeah, there's a lot of them.
Probably more than the other.
Well, I think you've listened to soulless music on the radio, I'm sure, and there's art you look at and you're like, yeah, they just didn't, or a movie, or I think the things that connect with people are the things that have soul that people put part of themselves into, whether that be art or photography or music or food or anything. I mean, there's a difference between a McDonald's hamburger and something that your grandmother cooked.
Right.
It's not just the flavor. It's, what is it? Marge Simpson, the secret ingredient is love.
Exactly. I'm looking, and by the way, folks, I will post the, I know it's tough for the people streaming. If you're driving on the radio, it's difficult to see pictures.
Photography on the radio
it doesn't always translate.
I've been trying to get photography on the radio for years, and it's not always a great mix.
I think it could work. There's a podcast there somewhere.
There's something there, yeah.
But I will post the photos that we talk about on there as well. And put a bunch of them on there. And the one you were talking about with the house falling into Plum Island, where are you standing on that shot? It's from a bit of an elevated perspective. Right?
It's there's a gentleman on Plum Island, Bob Connors, who is graciously allowed the media to use his house and his deck to chronicle that. I mean, it's obviously an important subject to him, having a house on the ocean on Plum Island.
Right.
But you go on his deck and you can see where the sand used to be 4 or 5 feet under the deck, and now it's 25 feet under his deck.
It is crazy, isn't it?
Yeah, and it is. But I remember taking that picture, and there were 4 or 5 different still photographers there, and 3 or 4 different news photographers, TV photographers. There, and it was just cold and windy and horrible. And
when was this?
2013.
It looks during one of the storms.
Yeah. March of 2013. But they lost, I think, 9 houses. I may be wrong about that, but they lost 9 houses on Plum Island during that storm. And it was just you go and you know these people.
Yeah.
The people in the community. I also think that's one thing that we have here, that sometimes when the guys from TV come up, or the guys from the Globe and the Herald come up, they take their pictures, they get their video, and they leave. And we take our pictures, and then we see these same people. That hit me once when I first started. There was a tragic event in West Newbury where a high school girl was murdered, and there were all these photographers there and all these reporters there, and I'm thinking, I have to go to their high school football game in 3 days. So I can't act like they act. And not that I would want to, but it's just different because you're
more connected.
I mean, if a reporter writes something bad about the mayor, they have to see the mayor tomorrow.
Right.
So local journalism has a different kind of feel to it than people who sort of just helicopter in. They get their pictures, they get their story, they leave. They really have no connection to what happens next or what happened before.
You just kind of hit on the power of the local newspaper. In general, right? I mean, that is the difference. It's those not small time stories, but it's those stories that not always the Globe's going to get out there for, but they are important to this community.
Oh, absolutely,
that is it, right? I mean, that's why it is so important.
I mean, that's one thing I think that sort of saves smaller papers is you can find out who won the Red Sox game 1,000 different places, but if you want to know who won the lacrosse game, the high school lacrosse game, you have to go to the Daily News.
Right.
Because no one else is really covering that.
Yeah.
No one else is covering the city council meeting. There's no other outlet for that except the local paper. And when we lose local papers, and we're losing local papers all over the place, that's what we lose. People always says, well, why does the press need to know this? It's like, well, we don't need to know this. You need to know this.
Right.
We're your conduit to what is actually going on in government and in schools.
Yeah.
So it's an extremely important thing.
What's the story you've covered that and maybe like I remember a reporter telling me once back when I was first starting in the news business, Lana Jones for WBZ, who has since passed away, but she said it was something along the lines of, you know, these school committee meetings. It was a Boston school committee meeting that was. She goes, they're boring and they're just you know they're tough to sit through sometimes, but they're important. And it's just it is. I mean, if you watch the school committee meeting, it's a good time to take a nap. And we cover plenty of them, but there are moments when, you know, they're not exactly the most exciting things in the world. But so much important stuff can happen and can come out of those things, and you want to be there for that moment. And I remember that always stuck with me. Like, don't just think you're better than something because it's boring, or just, you know, it's not always where the excitement is. It's there's something that might come out of it, just that chance. Is there something like that for you, where you're just completely unexpected or out of the woods, or
I mean, I think it's you never know what's going to happen. I mean, there have been times when I've been at those meetings, and you think something, or you've been to a town meeting, when they used to have the town meetings, especially in Salisbury, and I can remember going when the casinos were going in. Yeah. And you just sit there, and it's, I mean, Nate Silver calls it the, separating the signal from the noise. Okay, yeah. There's so much boringness going on in front of you that something happens, and if you're not paying attention, you miss it. It just goes right by. But I can remember there was when they were talking about putting casinos in Salisbury Beach, a man got up from Gamblers Anonymous, and he just told this just heartfelt story about his addiction to gambling. Yeah. I mean, he was against the building the casinos, but it was just one of those things where it's like, it's kind of, and all of a sudden it's like, whoa, wait a minute, this is kind of real, because you had people talking about the economic benefits and the economic not benefits, I can't think of a word, but then you talk about people who have like real life experience with something. Yeah. And stuff like that always sort of got me. It's that sort of thing where it's like, oh yeah, that's a different way of looking at this. It's somebody pouring their heart out. Yeah, it's a completely different way of looking at sort of the world, and that's happened with a couple of things where people have come. They've talking about a specific thing. I remember they were trying to get the one-way streets changed in Newburyport, and a guy came out and he talked about his son being hit by a car, and it's like, oh yeah, there's reasons why we sort of want not a lot of traffic here. Yeah, because there's kids playing, and it doesn't necessarily change your mind, but it gives you a different perspective on how to look at it. I'm sure after 3 decades, you get a story, probably a million stories like that probably would just keep coming back to you as we go. Yeah. I guess that's the life of a reporter and journalist at a local newspaper. Again, Jim Vaiknoras joining us here from the Newburyport Daily News. Moving away from the Newburyport Daily News, what was the number again? 30 how many? 30 years? 32 years. 32 years. Ronald Reagan was president. Ronald Reagan. Wow. Yeah. I'm 32. You were born in 1987. 1987. January 1987. So you were 3 months old? I started March 1st. So you were 3 months old when I started working at the Daily News. I do not know a world without you at the Newburyport Daily News. Yeah. I mean, if the first year I covered Newburyport's graduation, those kids are 50. Yep. So it's just, I'll see people with their grandkids that I covered in high school. Crazy. And that sort of started me thinking like I've been around a little. And my daughter is pregnant, so she's due in November. I wasn't married when I started at the paper, and I'm thinking, well, that's generational. Yeah. And I was like, yeah, I think it's time to hang them up. Well, congratulations. That's exciting news in the family. Maybe part of the reason you're stepping away from the crazy newspaper hours. It's a pretty big reason. Looking like some other challenges ahead, being a grandfather. Very good. What is the... well, let's keep it there. Let's keep it in the newsroom for a second, because I work in one. It's pretty much been my job out of college is being in the WBZ newsroom. We've changed newsrooms, but... it's kind of a unique place, the newsroom. It's actually people who
almost everybody I've talked to who's like an outsider that walks in to like check it out or just come around says, the one thing that always jumps out at me is people say it's an intimidating place, the newsroom. Like it seems, I don't know what it is about it, but it's just people are always working and like trying to get to the bottom of stuff. And I'm like, I guess I never looked at it that way, but I think we're friendly. But yeah, they say just the vibe of it was intimidating, but it is true. You become very tight with your coworkers, and it's a tight group, and everybody kind of is pulling in the same direction and trying to do their job, but for one common goal. And I guess maybe that's the feeling that people get. I can imagine it's kind of a tough thing to walk away from, the that camaraderie.
It definitely is. It's sort of it has always had sort of a band of brothers kind of thing.
Exactly. Yeah. You said it better than I did. Well done.
in shorter words too.
You did.
But yeah, that's the those are the things that I know a lot of ex-athletes always say that you miss the sort of camaraderie.
Yeah.
The the heading out to Plum Island in February when it's 6 below zero and you're trying to do a story on something and you're just like you share a misery.
Yeah.
So it builds bonds with people, and I've worked with hundreds and hundreds of people.
Yeah.
But every one of them, there's a story like that where we were waiting in the rain.
Yep.
For them to tow something in, or there was some tragedy that we covered that affected us.
Yeah.
And we talked about it afterwards, or sometimes it's just ridiculous stuff that happened.
Yeah.
That you're just like that.
Plenty of that
Can
too.
you believe that somebody said that?
Yeah.
Or like, how did they get elected to anything? Which is a lot. Although nobody I know now.
There you go.
But
well played. That is funny. There is and there is that camaraderie too around reporters and the photogs that are all out there doing that. Do you ever get like the photographer that comes up to you and goes, by the way, saw that picture last week, it was a great shot, way to be there for the moment, that sort of thing? It's
great when another photographer says that, but what I always and Brian Eaton, the other photographer, will tell you the same thing. What's meaningful to us is when somebody says that my picture's in their scrapbook.
Yep.
That you took my picture 20 years ago, at that baseball game, or just like on the swing with my dad.
Yep.
And that's in our scrapbook. Or you go into the schools, and there's always displays in the schools of our pictures that we took of those students. And in a way, when you photograph something or somebody, it connects you to them quite a bit. There's a picture there of the Newburyport High School soccer team when they lost. I think they won a state championship the next year. It's the soccer goalie, Lily Donovan.
Yep. She's
got her head turned straight up, and the rain's coming down, and they had just lost this game, and she was just like devastated. And I'm not friends with Lily. This was 8 or 9 years ago, but every time I see her, we talk about that picture.
Really?
Because it's that moment. It was a big moment in her life.
Yeah.
And I was standing 40 feet away from her taking her picture.
Yeah.
And it encapsulated everything that was going on with her at that time. And again, that empathy thing. Like I could feel what it felt like to lose that game.
Yeah.
Even though I didn't lose the game, I probably at the time couldn't have told you her name.
Yeah.
But you see it, and it's actually how entertainment works. You feel when Iron Man makes the snap at the end of the movie. You can feel that. But in real life, we do that in real life, and those are the things that I remember. That the sort of those little moments.
Yeah.
There's another picture on there that of a dad just calling his kid towards him, and it turns out I'm taking that picture that was the kid's first step.
Oh wow, really?
And it was just like, I didn't know that when I was taking the picture. It was just like a dad, and there was some color, and that was his first step. And I'm there just randomly taking his picture.
Wow. What was that assignment for the day? Go out and find something?
We do a lot of, about half of what we do, maybe 60% of what we do is unassigned pictures. We just go out and find pictures.
Really?
And that's another thing that I always liked about my job, and I think a lot of people don't realize it, is, the pictures of the houses going in the water and the big fires they're great, but it's the pictures of the stories within the margins, like the little things in life.
Yeah.
Those little moments. We live our lives through big moments, but there's always those little moments.
Yeah.
And the two kids eating ice cream together, laughing.
Yeah.
The dad with a 1-year-old walking. That's it's not a big moment to anyone else, but it's a big moment to them.
Yeah.
And if you capture it in the right way, it becomes more than that one kid's first step. It represents like parenthood. It represents that growing, that changing.
Right.
It becomes bigger than the moment itself. And when you do that, you've done your job.
Yeah.
That's when I'm like satisfied. It's like, oh yeah, that means a little bit more than that. There's a little kid looking at a horse, which is the best picture I've ever taken. I love that picture more than anything.
I'm going to change this one too. I want to make sure I keep taking these photos to put them on Twitter as we go. And before you get to the horse one, I love this one with the dad ducking away from the fishing pole of the.
That was my that won like every award. I took that in '91, and like every award that was at the Essex County Sportsman's Hunting and Fishing Day.
Really?
And it was just like I'm just not even hoping something happened. He's just a dad helping his kid fish.
Yeah.
And then that happened. So it was.
It feels very Newburyport too. It just all.
Yeah, it has that sort of thing, and like it's not even going to hurt him because it's not even a hook. It's just a sinker.
It's just a dad caught off guard by his. God, the horse picture is great for our radio listeners. And there, it's this. How old this kid is here? Right?
Probably 2 at the time. Yeah, and I think I took it about 6 or 7 years ago. So he's in the 4th grade or 5th grade at this point. It's kind of weird to think about too, huh? And that's an example too. Like that schooner, the horse has since passed away at the Spencer Pierce Little Farm.
Yeah.
And he was a very, like he would greet people.
Yeah.
So there was this event going on, and I just took a wide angle lens and I stood next to him thinking, I think something's going to happen here. Like you try to put yourself in the way where you have the most chance that something's going to happen. And that whole scene took 3 seconds. The kid come up, looked at the horse, and then ran away.
Wow.
So it was like 3 seconds, it's gone. If I hadn't had the right camera with the right lens in the right position, there's no way I would have got that. There's no way you can see that and then react to it. You have to anticipate it's going to happen. And it's like that in sports photography. You sort of play defense.
Yeah.
Like what's the offense going to run?
Yeah.
And then you look that way and you get an extra quarter of a second to figure out what's going to happen. But I use it when I photograph people too. It's like how can I best play the odds to get the picture, to get a great picture? Where's the most likely thing going to happen?
Level of anticipation, right?
Yeah, anticipation, and it's very evident in baseball. It's like, okay, there's a situation.
Yeah.
There's a guy on first, less than 2 outs. Probably something's going to happen at second base.
Yeah.
He's going to steal. It's going to be a double play. I mean, something weird could happen, and an antelope could run in and hit the pitcher, but it's unlikely. The odds are something's going to happen at second base.
Yeah,
and that's what and as you shoot these sports teams, as you get to know people, you get to know how a 2-year-old's going to react to something.
Yeah.
Or which guy in a baseball team looks like he can steal a base. You sort of over the years, you kind of be able to read people a little bit, and that's where empathy comes in.
Right.
Not necessarily empathy in like, I want to change the world and feed everybody, but empathy in like just understanding emotionally how certain people are going to react in certain situations. And
so it looks like this toddler spent the whole day here with this horse. But
it was literally, he ran up, looked up at the horse, and took off. And then I had to go find him because we have to get people's names. I have to find his parents, and it's like, little kids are easy because their parents are there.
Yeah.
Like a 7-year-old. Like, because you don't want to just go up and start talking to a 7-year-old and ask them their name. You try to ask them, like, where's your mom and dad? Or is this your kid? And that's the one thing that a lot of people who don't do this don't understand. It's like, it's not just taking pictures. We have to figure out who these people are, why they're there.
Yeah.
Get their name spelled right. and everything else.
That's right. You always hear that report at the end of a press conference. Can you spell that, please? Yeah, that's a real thing,
exactly.
Isn't it? Well, that's a fantastic picture. Again, we'll post these all on Twitter afterwards. This is Jim Vaiknoras, Newburyport Daily News. Is there a moment, maybe not that you wish you had back, but or maybe there is, but was there like a tough moment? Was there a tough story to shoot, or you get the assignment and you're like, I know I got to do it, but that's going to be a tough one to cover, that sort of thing?
Yeah, I think Jordan Shea's funeral. Jordan Shea was a soldier from Amesbury who was killed in action, and his funeral was tough.
Yeah.
I knew Jordan. He worked at the beach.
Yeah.
It was hard. It's hard to, a kid in his 20s. And a military funeral was very, very difficult to go into, because you're there and it's like, it's a funeral.
You probably know more than half the people walking through that door.
And that was probably the hardest thing is when I've had to cover funerals, especially funerals of people I know.
Yeah.
Like Al Lavender, his funeral, the former mayor, was killed in a plane crash.
Yeah.
I knew Al very well, and it was maybe didn't sting as much as a young person. Not that it doesn't sting anyway, but it still was a difficult thing to have to go cover because you have to be objective in a way. but you can't not feel what's going on around you. You just can't. And I think it's sort of, as I said, and as we talked about before, it's not going to work if you don't feel something.
Yeah.
But if you feel too much, then you can't do your job. But I'd say funerals definitely are the most difficult thing to. And usually we don't cover them in depth. Trista Zink's funeral was very difficult.
Yeah.
I know her parents pretty well. That was extremely difficult to cover. But we're there because everyone else can't be there.
Yeah.
We're in almost universally, the families have been very, very supportive of us being there.
Yeah.
To the point of being invited in. It's like, because they know it's difficult on us too, especially when you know them. And people want to have that story of their family told, their family member told.
Right.
They want people to know them and to know the impact that they have, that everyone has on other people's lives.
Yeah.
So I think that, I'd have to say, hands down, it's covering funerals.
It is nice when, and it doesn't necessarily have to be funerals, but it is nice when people do kind of understand, our side of the business, though, as far as we're not always here to invade privacy or that sort of thing, because sometimes there is that element of I'm not talking to you, leave me alone. Well, if you think about why I'm here, it's there's a reason for it, and one that you'll probably appreciate. And not everybody always gets that. I'm sure you've run into those moments where get that camera out of my face.
I have run into a lot of policemen who don't want me there.
Yeah,
which is fine. I can understand their point of view. They're in a very stressful situation, and I show up at a automobile accident or a fire or something, and their job is to protect the people who are there. Yeah. So I think that, like anything else in a stressful situation, or it's not so much that they're angry at me, but I'm in the way.
Yeah.
But I have to do my job.
It's your job to be in the way.
And it's people would say, well, why did you need to take a picture of that automobile accident? I'm like, well, maybe someone will see it and put their seatbelt on first of all.
Yeah.
Because I don't know about you, but when you see something horrific, you're a little more careful for at least a couple of days. And it's not my job to decide what is news and what isn't news. That's my editor's job.
Yeah.
My job is to go out and photograph what's happening around me.
Yeah.
But yeah, I've had, as I said, not a lot. And a lot of times I've had run-ins with police officers and then gone and talked to them afterwards.
Yeah.
A couple of days after, a day after, and it's usually that thing where it's like, I understand it's a very stressful situation. You come on a fatal accident, and especially if you're the first one on the scene, it's not pretty.
Yeah.
And I can see that stress, and I understand that, and I always try to see the other person's point of view. So rather than be angry, I'll always try to talk to someone about it. I mean, not always. I mean, let's face it. Sometimes we're not. Sometimes we're not the best people in the world. But you always try to get the other side of it.
Yeah.
And it's the same thing with stories we've done. People might say, well, they'll come up and say, well, I didn't like what you did there, or what you wrote, or the photograph you took, because there's another side of it. And rather than get angry and defensive, I just try to say, well, what is the other side? Why don't you talk to us? People will say, well, when the real story comes out, it's like, well, why don't you tell me the real story now?
Yeah.
And, we don't have an agenda. That's another thing, and you'll find that too. Like, I don't know a lot of reporters that have agendas.
Yeah.
That really, they don't. They want to get to the truth. They want to tell a good story.
Yeah.
Especially locally. Most of our reporters, actually none of our reporters are from Newburyport.
Really?
That we have. I think two of them live in Newburyport, but they're not.
Yeah.
They don't
out to get you.
They don't have to get anybody.
Yeah.
They don't support, or people think, well, you guys are are in bed with this candidate or that candidate. It's just not true.
Well, that's a whole different world these days. It's like the most politically volatile climate in the world. So I usually say I'm doing my job in the newsroom when we get calls, and you get the call from the person. What are you, liberal, left leaning, yada yada? And then I got to tell you, so 2 minutes ago somebody yelled and called us conservative.
Everyone should be a little bit afraid of you and a little bit mad at you.
But yeah, it's certainly a crazy time in that regard. But that's very interesting stuff. I wonder what's your biggest lesson? And I'm sure you, maybe even at the Newburyport Daily News, you've worked with some young photographers. What's the best lesson you can give to the young photographer these days?
The best lesson is to study business.
Really?
Learn the business end of photography, and because taking pictures is not hard. It really isn't. In fact, that's the hardest thing about photography, is how easy it is.
Yeah.
There's no discipline that goes into taking a picture. You can just do it. So I always tell them to, find out who you need and who needs you.
Yeah.
Because that's how you react with people. If somebody, especially reporters, that's the line I always use. It's like, these people aren't calling you back because they don't need you.
Mm-hmm.
You need them right now.
Yeah.
So identify the difference and deal with people accordingly.
Yeah.
And, as we talked about, it's all about patience, anticipation, and empathy. When you take a picture of a little kid, you're going to forget about it the next day, but that kid's not going to forget about it.
Yeah.
When you deal with people, and it sounds a little egotistical, but it's a bigger deal to them than it is to you.
Yeah.
When you do a story on someone, that's going in their scrapbook. That's something they're going to share with people. So understand how important it is to them, when to you it's just like, oh, it's just a stupid story. I got to do it, just a picture of someone. I'm going to go take a picture of the goalie at the hockey. It's like, but it means a lot to people.
Yeah.
And so you have to remember that always, that how much it really means to other people to have their name and their pictures in the paper.
Yeah.
So it's, again, over the years, you don't always feel that way. It's a job. So there's days when it's just not fun, and it's just, you don't really want to do it. But that's the thing that always motivated me is seeing people who have my pictures.
Yeah.
And it's,
you still smile every time you say that.
Yeah,
you smile.
I know.
That's fantastic. You go to you go to a story on a profile on a goaltender that you might think is not that sexy of a story to start, but you know what? Maybe something else happens when you're at the rink, right?
Yeah, that's true. You never know. That's the greatest thing about covering sports is that you never know what's going to happen.
Yep.
And I do really enjoy shooting sports, especially high school sports, because there is such an emotion to it.
Yeah.
They really just, it feels bright when you're there, and win or lose, they leave it out on the field, and you don't get that with pro sports so much.
I should have you critique a picture. One of my favorite pictures I ever took was I was and I'm not a photographer, but I do try to stay active on the Twitter just for the newsroom, and it was after a big Sox win on the road to that second World Series, and I guess it was the second one. And I'm walking out of Kenmore Square, and it just happened to be just elevated perfectly, just enough as you're walking down the hill towards Kenmore, leaving Fenway down the hill. And I just looked up and I said, my goodness, this place is ready to, just it's a buzz like you never see. Like the place is just, it's going to be a party. It was a big win, and it just, all of Kenmore was packed. And it was the Shane Victorino night, the home run.
Oh, yeah.
The grand slam there. Just came back to me, and I took the picture, and it just, I don't know know what I did that was so special. I'm certainly not trained, but it just looked cool, and I remember it just exploded on Twitter. I had people just loved it, and they said it was a great photo.
Well, without even looking at it, I can tell you that, like, you're emotional talking about it.
Yeah,
you were part of what was going on around you.
Yeah.
It wasn't like you walked out of a void and took a picture of something.
Yeah.
You were experiencing it well, and that translates, like I said, into your photograph.
Yeah.
So that's probably why, because it was your enthusiasm, your passion for the Red Sox. And one of my favorite Red Sox pictures is actually of Sean Reardon, who used to be a bartender at the Park Lunch.
Okay.
And the Red Sox, one of their World Series wins in 2004, at the win, he just turned around and pumped his fist.
Yeah.
It's just a bar full of people, and he's the bartender. So I wasn't, it's 40 miles from Fenway Park.
Yeah.
It wasn't like I was just watching the game and, trying to get a crowd reaction. We do that with the Super Bowl a lot. We'll go to a bar and watch the game with people. But I love that because that tells that story of the Red Sox win in a very, very, very different way.
Yeah.
Because it really is about how the fans react to things and how people react to things.
That's
but I always love that picture, Sean. And
I can actually picture that. You can just picture looking up at the TV.
Yeah. And it was just perfect.
That's great. How about, actually, while we're on this, in little, not necessarily small town, but kind of the St. Louis Dispatch here. Did you see that story? Game 6, they accidentally posted before Game 6, Bruins, they accidentally posted all the thank yous to the Stanley Cup champions and letters to
They do that. There's so many stories about that.
Yeah.
The famous one is them bringing the champagne out in the Forum back in the Bird era when they were supposed to win Game 6 and they didn't.
Did they do that in '86 too with Buckner?
Yeah. It's just like they and with Buckner they had it up on the screen.
Yeah.
Congratulations,
Flash, right?
yeah. 1986 World Series champion.
Just makes it all the
And
tougher.
I don't know how often that happens, because it probably happens more often than we think, but unless it's so dramatically a fail, you're never going to notice it.
Well, I mean, all those preparations come in, right? You got to be prepared for that thing. You want to be right on top of it when it happens. So but you're just not supposed to hit send.
I think, and I can understand it in one way. Like our deadlines are so early that we have to hold deadlines for like the Super Bowl. We might be able to get a score in.
Yeah.
So they want to have everything prepared, both win and lose, and they do. That's what newspapers do. You get everything sort of prepared, win or lose, but it's not like it was a close game. I mean, it's not like it was overtime and it's like they're waiting. It was, you could be, you
that
want
afternoon.
Yeah, pretty much. You go like, they're not going to win this game. I mean, you knew that right from the start. But
my favorite story is when Bill Belichick used it. Did you ever see that video of Bill Belichick before the very first Super Bowl with the Rams? And no, it was the Philadelphia Super Bowl actually when they beat the Eagles. And he's doing they have video of his pre-game speech. It was like the day before. Or at least the morning. I think it was the morning of the Super Bowl, and he's there telling his guys, and he goes, "Here, guys, I just thought you want to read this. This is the plans for the Philadelphia parade. It's going to start at 11 a.m. by the way, on Saturday. For those of you who want to attend, it's going to take a left and he goes down the street, goes through the whole parade route, and you can. I've heard Christian Fourier and a few other guys in past years go and like we had never heard a coach do something like that, and like we're all looking at each other, and we couldn't believe it. We were like, we weren't going to lose that football game.
Yeah, well, he's a great motivator. Yeah. It's funny because win or lose, both teams have to make tentative plans for these things.
Yeah, and that's true. Every team has those parade
I'm
plans.
sure the Patriots also had Boston also had a plan in place for if they won. But you can, as we see in politics, you can spin it in a way that's like, they made a big deal. It was the Patriots beat the Steelers in the AFC Championship game. I forget what year it was, but they made a big deal about the Steelers had booked their rooms for the Super Bowl.
Yeah,
and then I think the New York Times reported that, of course they did. The Patriots also booked their rooms for the Super Bowl.
That's right.
But it's great the way they sort of spin it, and you love stuff like that sort of gamesmanship. But, and they won that game because Donovan McNabb was out of shape. But anyway.
We won't get into analysis of it. So let's give we kind of bashed the St. Louis Dispatcher a little bit. How about this? You want to critique this photo here? I thought that was a great front page the other day of the terrible call in game 5.
That is wonderful.
Isn't that good? Yeah, I'll show it to the camera here, too. If you, Cody, you want to get that on there? I think a lot of you have seen it. There's the trip. Hopefully it's translating okay. And it says, "What a trip" is the caption. I thought that was a great front page by the St. Louis Dispatch. So, terrible call, too.
But what would we talk about without these terrible calls?
Exactly.
Without, I still get mad about, Knobloch missing the tag on Nomar going from first to second in 2003.
Yep.
And it's like, how could you call that?
It is funny, isn't it? Part of me thinks, by the way, that they should not. I'm not a big instant replay guy. I like the flow of the game. I think human error is part of it, and especially in basketball, they're ruining my college basketball. I think those referees like being on TV and they go over to the monitor.
Yeah. I think baseball and football I don't mind because there are natural breaks in the game.
Yeah.
But basketball, it's like hockey or soccer. It's all about the flow of it.
Yeah.
And when you're playing, I never played hockey, but I played basketball. And when you're playing, you can't stop playing.
Yeah.
And just like spend 30 seconds just standing there.
Yeah.
It completely takes you out of it.
You can see players rolling their eyes half the time.
And great players miss layups.
Yep.
That's part of the game. Yep. It's not a computer simulation. And I think there's been very few instances in sports where the referee has wanted one team or another to win. Yeah. They simply make mistakes.
Yeah.
And I think it gets worse because of high definition. We see the mistakes when, when I watched, the 75 Super Bowl, I couldn't tell if the guy caught the ball or not on TV.
Yeah.
But now you can.
Yeah.
So I think they're just as good and bad as they used to be, except we see every little every wart and every wrinkle now in a game, and it's
a million different camera angles too.
So it's a tough job.
Do you know the quote that's sticking with me? There's an old photography quote, and I'm wondering if maybe I'm not sure how big it's a bad job by me. I should remember his name because it was a quote that has stuck with me for many, many years. But basketball photographer, and he said a quote, and it was pretty much exactly what you were saying earlier. It struck a chord with me, but he said, you've been there for great moments. It must be awesome watching these things happen courtside. And he said, if I'm actually watching it, I've missed the shot.
Yeah. Which
I thought was, that makes complete sense to me, but that obviously talks.
Yeah, you can't watch.
Yeah.
I mean, like I'm uncomfortable if I'm at a baseball game and there's not a scoreboard.
Yeah.
Because I'm not paying attention to anything. So every once in a while, I have to turn around and figure out how many outs there are. I'm constantly asking, like the kid coaching first base, how many outs? And he's like, look, just because it affects everything. And I forget like what the score is, or I'm like, wow, I can't believe that they're up 15. It doesn't look like that to me. But yeah, you can't watch. It's a different kind of watching.
Yeah.
Like I'll have friends who were like, well, why don't you cover more pro sports? And it's like, first of all, it's far away.
Yeah.
The Pats are great, but it's the whole day, and you're working, and you don't actually watch the game.
Yeah. Yeah.
You don't really see anything. But that's absolutely true. There's as I said, the same thing. Baseball and football are a little bit different because you get to reset.
Yeah.
But hockey, you just have to. It's very difficult to photograph hockey. I always kind of feel bad about like the parents.
Yeah.
Like 3 feet away from the glass trying to shoot through it, and I'm just like, I just want to go up to them and say, your pictures are going to be terrible.
Yeah.
It's hard to do. It's a very, very difficult thing to do.
You don't get the hole there either in the glass.
No,
like
they don't do that.
Yeah.
Still at the Garden is the hole.
Yeah.
Yeah, which is kind of fun.
It is,
but you have a very limited view, and you got to be very, very quick.
Yeah.
Because hockey is, especially pro hockey, is so fast.
It's crazy when you're down low how fast that game is.
It's ridiculous, and it throws you the first time you're that close to hockey. Or basketball is the same way.
Yeah.
The NBA is, these guys are bigger and faster than you can imagine humans can be.
Yeah.
And you're trying to take their picture.
Yeah.
And your time is all off. If you used to Newburyport High School basketball and you go shoot the Celtics, it really, like the speed of the games is really throwing.
Even though that was a good Newburyport team this year.
It was a good Newburyport. They were a lot of fun to watch.
Yeah, big fan of their coach. Coach Dave Clay is a good.
They were. I took his picture playing basketball when he was in high school.
There you go. Small world. Right? How about for some of those big? It feels like over the past. Well, maybe it's just always going to be this way now that I'm a grown adult. But it seems like my whole adult life, Boston has almost been like there's always a Boston connection. There's always some sort of connection to this area. And we've had some of these big stories, not all good. I think the marathon bombing, of course, is an international story in the end. How do you make these big stories that are national, that are global stories? Like, do you remember what you did for the marathon bombing here? Like, there must have been local angles here. Like, because you do try to localize them.
Yeah.
So there's a connection to Newburyport. There's a connection to everywhere here.
There's
right?
always a connection to Newburyport. I think about the marathon bomber, but the thing that always got me was 9/11.
Yep.
We lost a lot of local people on 9/11, and everyone was affected by it, obviously. And I can remember Bob Hayes from Amesbury, who was killed on Flight 11. I can clearly remember going to his house we did an interview with his wife and his son, who was 5 at the time. The reporter was talking to Kathy, and I'm just in the other room, and a little 5-year-old kid, and I'm talking, playing with his dog, and he just came up to me and he said, just matter of fact, he said, my dad died in an airplane.
Wow.
It can't not affect you.
Yeah.
And you're thinking, that's right. They live right across the street from Lowell's Boat Shop.
Yeah.
They're right there, or I go by their house every day.
Yeah.
And in the Trentinis and at Triton, and I've got to know. We did stories on their daughter, and just it affects everybody.
Yeah.
And it also makes you realize that, like, when you see something on television, and you might say, "Well, it was a plane crash and only one person died." That person could have been the guy next door.
Yeah.
So it affects you like that. You think about, people like Jordan Shea. Go to Arlington Cemetery, and there's 100,000 of them.
Yeah.
And not just Americans. When you think about the people, that same story happens all the time.
Yeah.
And you have to pull back because it can start to affect you a little too much.
Yeah.
But I think that's one of the things that my job has taught me is that, these little stories, they're all over the place. Even if they're not affecting us, they're affecting someone just as much as they're affecting.
Yeah.
For every kid from Amesbury or Newburyport or Derek Hines who was killed in action is, when they put the numbers up, especially during the Iraq War, where it's like, oh, it's only, 4,000. It's like, okay. It's 4,000 of those funerals.
Yeah.
It's 4,000 of those kids who had friends and parents. When you experience it once, you kind of, as I said, it builds that sort of, you just see it more.
Yeah. I guess that's probably what the impact that you can make is probably part of what keeps you going for 32 years, huh? Because let's face it, there's the newsroom life is it's a lot of tough hours. It can be a lot of tough days. Not always the most glamorous of jobs. I see a lot of reporters and photogs that have moved on, say recovering journalists, which is kind of the way to make, I think, other people in the business laugh. But it's not always the easiest of lives, and but I guess that's probably what you do it for, right?
Yeah, I mean, I was actually last Friday. I did a video. It was like a 7-minute video, a Counting Crows song, just pictures from throughout the years. Yeah. And I posted it on Facebook. I was absolutely blown away by the stuff people in the community that I didn't even know were posting, just thanking me, telling me you took a picture of my kid 15 years ago. And I'm like, I couldn't believe it. I was just like, you kind of think you hope you noticed.
Yeah.
But when you find out that you're actually appreciated,
you don't realize that impact.
And I'm not a modest person. Like, I'm not like, oh, geez. And as you probably noticed, I'm also not particularly shy. But it really kind of, I was like, I had no idea. I literally had no idea that, as I said, that I had an impact on people's lives.
Even caught you off guard. Right?
Yeah, I know. And,
the man who anticipates everything.
I know.
That is too funny. Well, the final couple minutes here, I will tell you, Jim Vaiknoras, Newburyport Daily News, walking away from that newsroom here after 32 years. And it's been very nice enough to join us here. I don't know, it's probably a busy time for you as you try to wrap things up here a little bit, right?
Yeah, quite a bit.
I appreciate you making some time for us. This has been fun. I will tell you, usually I take about 2 breaks during the show, and I blew them all off because I was so interested with this conversation. So that's probably the best compliment I can give a guest.
I appreciate it very much.
I hope you didn't mind the extra talking, but that's fantastic. We'll post some of these pictures on Twitter that we've been talking about here because some of them are great. I'm having the opportunity to scroll through during some of Jim's answers, which is great. Why don't you? We can probably end here. Why don't you? Just talk about this community here and how welcoming they were to you and your profession and that sort of thing.
I can't imagine, first of all, for talking about a place with this volunteerism and community spirit.
Yeah.
There are so many great people that just go out of their way for people. I mean, if you think about the organizations, the fundraising, everything from the NAA to Yankee Homecoming to our neighbor's table over in Amesbury. You can have lunch at St. Paul's Church.
Yeah.
You should go there for lunch sometime and talk to the people there. You can give them some money if you want, and then you can just talk to people who may be having a hard time or just need somebody to be around.
I can tell you've done a few of those.
And there are Thanksgiving dinner right here.
Yep. You
can come for Thanksgiving dinner. And other towns, like I live in Wakefield, it's a great town, and there's a lot of volunteers, but nothing on the level that you have in Newburyport. And the physical beauty of the place. I mean, they're as ridiculous as anyone.
Yes. Every town has that.
It's like, oh, wait a minute. So we don't have enough parking, but we don't want a parking garage? I don't understand. But anyway.
I'll just take the picture.
And but they're a great group of people, and it's a really great city, and it's always going to be a part of me.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to never come back here, obviously. I mean, it's hard place not to come.
Yeah, absolutely.
But I haven't liked my job every day, but I think I've loved it every day.
Wow, great line. When's the official step away date?
I am doing a couple of things this week, but pretty much this weekend. The last thing I'm going to do is Saturday.
Well, we appreciate you making some time for us. It was very nice of you to stop by. I like asking, we get a lot of kids who watch this show, especially that high school age, going into college, a lot of that sort of age group. What's the best advice for the kid that wants to be a photog, journalist, newsroom person? What's the best advice?
As I said, talk to everyone you can talk to.
Yeah.
The hardest thing about being a news photographer is not the taking pictures.
Yep.
It's that you have to go up and talk to people, and you have to get their story. Be curious, and be passionate about it. And that's the main thing. You know, take a lot of pictures and be self-critical.
Awesome. Well, Jim Vaiknoras, thank you so much, man. It was a pleasure.
Well, thank you. This was fantastic.
Good. I'm glad you enjoyed it.
Yeah.
Like I said, that's the best compliment I can give a guest when we take no commercial breaks. So, sorry, Sarah. You'll have to figure that out later.
Yeah, it felt like it was like 3 minutes.
I always tell people it flies by. I tell people I'm going to probably keep you for a half hour. Whole half hour. Don't worry. It'll be fine. Also, Colin Cody producing this first show
Thank you,
today.
Colin.
Thank you, Colin. Welcome aboard, sir. A pretty good job out of you. Tyler Neufeld as well. Again, Sarah Hayden, and I think that's all. Willie Dissett's probably back there somewhere too. Thank you guys to the whole team who make my life easy. Jim Vaiknoras, a great 3 decades at the Newburyport Daily News, stepping away. We appreciate him making some time for us here on a Tuesday afternoon. We'll see you around, Jim. Let's do this again sometime if you don't mind.
I would love it. Thank you so much.
All right. We'll see you Thursday, everybody. My name is Drew Moholland. This is Afternoon Drive on Joppa Radio.